Stepping out into the cool night air, Emily approached cautiously, her heartbeat steady but aware of the unknown in front of her. As she got closer, she could see the man clearly now, injured, barely conscious, his breathing uneven in a way that made every second feel critical. There was no one else around, no immediate help, just her and the reality of the situation she had chosen to step into. She reached for her phone, calling for emergency services, her voice calm but urgent as she explained what she had found, her eyes never leaving the man in front of her. When the call ended, she knew waiting would not be enough. Without hesitation, she removed the scarf from around her neck, pressing it firmly against the wound she could see, doing what she could with what she had, not because she was trained for it, but because doing nothing was not an option she could accept. Time moved differently in those moments, slower and heavier, each second carrying the weight of uncertainty as she stayed there beside him, alone in the darkness, focused on keeping him conscious, speaking to him even when he could barely respond, grounding him in a moment that could have easily slipped away. There was no guarantee he would make it, no reassurance that help would arrive in time, just the quiet determination of someone refusing to walk away. The sound of distant sirens eventually broke through the silence, faint at first, then growing closer, a sign that she had done enough to keep hope alive. When the ambulance finally arrived, the scene shifted quickly, professionals taking over, voices replacing silence, urgency replacing stillness. Emily stepped back as they worked, her role in the moment coming to an end as quietly as it had begun. She answered a few questions, brief and direct, offering only what was necessary before stepping away from the situation entirely. She did not wait for recognition, did not stay to learn what would happen next, and when it became clear that her presence was no longer needed, she left as simply as she had arrived. She never asked his name and never expected to see him again. To her, it was a moment, an isolated decision made in the middle of an ordinary night that would eventually blend into the rest of her life without much thought. But for the man she left behind, it was something else entirely, something he would carry with him long after that night ended. Because while Emily moved forward without looking back, the man whose life she had held together in those critical minutes did not have the luxury of forgetting. But he never forgot her. For 3 weeks after that night on the empty road, the man whose life Emily Carter had helped preserve refused to let the moment fade into something distant or forgettable. His name was William Ashford, a man known in certain circles for his influence, his reach, and the kind of resources that allowed him to move through the world without obstacles most people would never notice. But in those weeks, none of that mattered as much as a single unanswered question, the identity of the woman who had stopped when no one else did. For 3 weeks, he searched. Records were checked, reports were reviewed, timelines reconstructed from fragments of information that meant nothing to anyone else, but everything to him. He remembered the details others might have overlooked, the sound of her voice, the calm in her urgency, the way she stayed when she could have walked away, and he built his search around those memories with a focus that did not waver. On this particular night, as rain fell steadily across the city, a black luxury vehicle moved with quiet precision through the streets, its presence understated but unmistakable to those who knew what to look for. Inside, there was no conversation, only a controlled silence that reflected the intent behind the journey. Security vehicles followed at a distance, coordinated, deliberate, forming a moving perimeter that suggested importance without drawing unnecessary attention. William Ashford sat in the back, composed but alert, his gaze fixed ahead as if the destination carried more weight than anything he had dealt with in years. Every detail had been confirmed, every lead narrowed down until there was only one place left to go, one door that connected the past 3 weeks to the present moment unfolding outside. At the same time, just a few miles away, Emily Carter still stood in the rain with Margaret Carter, the reality of what had happened settling in slowly, not through sudden realization, but through the steady acceptance that comes when there is nothing left to question. The cold had begun to sink deeper, their clothes heavy, their movements slower, yet neither of them spoke much, because there were no words that could change what had already been decided inside that house. Through the window, faint and distant, the silhouette of Daniel Carter could be seen moving through a space that now felt entirely his, his posture relaxed in a way that suggested resolution rather than regret. Vanessa Hale moved freely behind him, no longer cautious, no longer observing from the edges, but existing within the space as if she had always belonged there. To Daniel, this was control, the result of a decision made with clarity and executed without hesitation, a moment where everything aligned exactly as he intended. But what existed inside that house and what was approaching it were moving toward each other with a precision none of them could yet see. The distance between decision and consequence was closing, not gradually, but with a quiet certainty that did not require announcement. The black vehicle turned onto the street, its headlights cutting through the rain as it slowed, aligning itself with the house that had just become the center of everything. Inside, Daniel remained unaware, still operating within the assumption that his actions had settled the matter, that what was outside no longer held any relevance to him. Outside, Emily and Margaret stood just far enough from the door to feel the weight of what had been taken from them, but not yet aware that something was about to shift in a way neither of them expected. The vehicle came to a complete stop, its engine still running, its presence now impossible to ignore for anyone paying attention. A door opened slowly, deliberately, and in that moment, the separation between past and present disappeared completely. And then he found her. The moment the black vehicle came to a stop in front of the house, something shifted in a way that could not be explained but could be felt, even before a single word was spoken. From inside, Daniel Carter noticed it first, not because he was expecting anything, but because the presence of that car did not belong on his street, not at that hour, not in that kind of weather. He moved closer to the window, his expression tightening slightly as he tried to make sense of what he was seeing, while behind him, Vanessa Hale paused, her attention drawn to the same unexpected interruption. Outside, Emily Carter and Margaret Carter turned almost instinctively, their focus pulled toward the quiet arrival that now stood between them and whatever came next. The rain continued to fall, steady and unchanging, but everything else seemed to slow, as if the moment itself was waiting to unfold with precision. The door of the vehicle opened, and William Ashford stepped out with a presence that did not demand attention, but commanded it anyway. There was no urgency in his movement, no visible emotion driving him forward, just a calm, controlled focus that made it clear he knew exactly why he was there. The people accompanying him remained at a distance, allowing him to move without interference, their role understood without being announced. As he walked toward the house, his gaze did not shift toward Daniel standing behind the glass, nor toward Vanessa lingering in the background. He did not acknowledge them, did not pause to assess the situation inside, because his purpose was not connected to them. He moved past the door as if it were irrelevant, as if the power Daniel believed he held within those walls had no bearing on what was about to happen outside of them. Emily stood still, her grip tightening slightly on the handle of her suitcase as William Ashford approached, the distance between them closing with a quiet certainty that carried more weight than any confrontation could have. For a brief moment, there was confusion in her expression, not fear, not hesitation, just the natural uncertainty of someone trying to understand why a stranger was walking toward her with such intent. Then he stopped just a few steps away, his focus steady, his voice calm, but direct as he spoke the words that connected everything she had left behind on that empty road to the reality standing in front of her now. "I've been looking for you." Inside the house, Daniel's composure began to shift, not dramatically, but enough to reveal that something was no longer aligning with his expectations. He watched closely now, trying to understand the interaction unfolding just beyond his control, his mind working quickly to place William Ashford within a context that made sense to him. But there was no immediate answer, no clear explanation, just a growing awareness that the situation outside was not as simple as he had assumed. Vanessa, who had once moved with quiet confidence through that house, now seemed less certain, her presence fading into the background as her attention fixed on the same moment, the same realization slowly forming. William did not raise his voice, did not create a scene, because he did not need to. The weight of what he was about to say carried enough impact on its own. He looked directly at Emily, his expression steady, his tone unchanged as he made something clear that could not be misunderstood, not by her, and certainly not by the man watching from inside. "The woman you threw away saved my life." In that single sentence, The balance of everything shifted, not gradually, not subtly, but completely, leaving no room for interpretation, no space for denial. Only the undeniable reality that the decision Daniel Carter believed had secured his control had instead placed him on the wrong side of something far greater than he had anticipated. What followed was not loud, not chaotic, and not driven by emotion in the way Daniel Carter might have expected if the roles were reversed. William Ashford did not raise his voice or direct his attention toward the man inside the house, because to him, Daniel was no longer the center of this moment. His focus remained on Emily Carter, steady and deliberate, as if the past 3 weeks had led to this exact point with no intention of deviation. There was a level of respect in the way he addressed her, something that had been absent in her life for longer than she had realized, and it showed not through grand gestures, but through the simplicity of his words and the clarity of his intent. He acknowledged what she had done, not as an obligation, but as something that carried weight, something that deserved to be recognized properly. Then, without hesitation or unnecessary explanation, he offered her a way forward, an opportunity that was not framed as charity, but as a continuation of the value she had already proven she carried. Emily did not respond immediately, not because she was unsure, but because she understood the gravity of what was being placed in front of her. Just moments earlier, she had been standing in the rain with nothing but what she could carry, her life reduced to a single decision made by someone else. Now, in the span of a few words, the direction of that life had shifted entirely, not through revenge, not through confrontation, but through something far more controlled. She straightened slightly, not to prove anything, but because the weight she had been carrying no longer held the same pressure. Margaret Carter stood beside her, watching closely, her earlier concern replaced with a quiet recognition that something had changed in a way she had hoped for but could not have predicted. Inside the house, Daniel remained where he was, but the position he believed he held had already begun to lose its meaning. The certainty that had defined his actions earlier that night no longer fit the reality unfolding in front of him, and for the first time, he was forced to observe rather than control. Vanessa Hale, who had once moved confidently within that space, now seemed smaller within it, her presence no longer carrying the same influence it had just moments before. Neither of them spoke, because there was nothing they could say that would shift what had already been set into motion. William Ashford gave a final nod, not as a conclusion, but as a confirmation that what needed to be done had been done, and then he stepped back slightly, allowing Emily the space to move forward on her own terms. There was no need for further explanation, no need to revisit what had happened inside that house, because its importance had already diminished in the face of what came next. Emily took a step forward, not toward the house she had just been forced out of, but toward something entirely different, something that existed beyond the control of the man who had tried to define her limits. In the end, it wasn't power that defined him. It was the moment he chose to misuse it. As the rain continued to fall and the distance between what Emily Carter had lost and what now stood in front of her became clearer, one question remained that no one else could answer for you. If you were in Daniel Carter's position, with control, ambition, and the belief that every decision was justified by progress, would you have made the same choice he did, or would you have seen the value in what you already had before it was too late to hold on to it? And if you were Emily Carter, standing in the aftermath of betrayal with an opportunity to rebuild your life in a completely different direction, would you ever consider going back to the place that once defined you? Or would you walk away for good, knowing that some doors, once closed, should never be reopened? Let us know in the comments. And if you think this story was shocking, if it made you question how quickly power can shift and how easily people can misjudge what truly matters, then the next story we're about to share might change the way you see trust forever. And please don't forget like, share and hit that subscribe button.